The Carleton College Convocation program is a weekly lecture series that brings fresh insights and perspectives from experts in a variety of fields. The program has a rich history dating back several decades. The selected Convocation speakers assist the liberal arts mission of centering thoughtful conversations within education and beyond.
Good morning. Hope everyone's having a great and warm morning. My name is Vivian Agugo, and I'm a current junior majoring in cognitive science and neuroscience on the pre-health track. Amos Paul Kennedy Jr. was born in 1948 in Lafayette, Louisiana, is an American printer, book artist, and papermaker known for his social and political commentary, particularly through printed works. He earned a Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics from the Grambling State University in Louisiana in 1972, and initially worked as a system analyst at AT&T. However, after a life-changing trip to the Colonial Williamsburg, a living history museum in Virginia, he was inspired to switch careers and pursue printmaking, leading him to get a Master's of Fine Arts from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Growing up during the Civil Rights era in the 1960s, Mr. Kennedy witnessed the rise of Black nationalism in the 1940s. Now living in the post-Civil Rights era, he observed how the movement shaped Black identity and drew his inspiration from this for his works. As a fellow artist myself, I know that art is a way for people to express one's culture and heritage, a quality that Mr. Kennedy exemplifies. His bold graphics not only pleases the eye, but conveys important messages. He incorporates words from activists like Rosa Parks and peaceful protests such as the Selma to Montgomery marches to honor the names of lives lost during these movements. The words themselves are central to Kennedy's work. They serve not only as visuals, but convey important messages that are thought-provoking and sometimes confrontational. As we begin this month commemorating Black history, it is important to reflect on the contributions made by artists like Mr. Kennedy and continue to fight for progress. His works have been exhibited in many museums, galleries, and libraries across the nation, including the Minnesota Center for Book Arts. So let's welcome with grand applause and jazzy snaps, Amos Paul Kennedy Jr.
Thank you all for being here. And I am kind of delighted to be here. I've been telling the story how in 2023, I was invited to speak, but I had a previous engagement. And so 2024. And then I told them I could do it in 2025. And I had it on my calendar for a whole year. And then this past September, a friend of mine invited me to a book arts fair in Miami that's taking place at the same time. And he said, why would you want to go to Minnesota when you can go to Miami? And I said, well, I want to see snow. Because I'm living in Detroit and we don't get snow the way that they claim we used to get it. But I know Minnesota cannot be Minnesota without snow. And I got here only to be disappointed. There is very little snow, at least in this part of Minnesota. And it is shocking because when you hear people talk, just 70 years ago, you would be flooded with snow. You wouldn't be able to get around. Or you barely got around. Your lakes, all your lakes would be frozen. And all this is changing. It has changed within my lifetime, which is 74 years plus. So how much change is going to take place in the next 70 years? And what will that change do to those entities on this planet that cannot move? Oh, I'll pack up and go someplace colder. Oh, I'll pack up and go someplace warmer. But the trees, the grass, what will happen to them? Right now we have infestations of bugs that did not exist this far north because of the climate coming from the south. The trees do not have a defense for that. And they will not be able to miraculously make a defense overnight. Serious changes are coming. When I talk to students these days, I always ask them to forgive the mess that my generation is leaving you with. We have done harm to this planet that you will have to live with and try to correct. And my generation continues to do this. We have a hold on power, and we don't want to give it up, despite the fact that we don't know how to use it. We are blinded by a philosophy, by an idealism that no longer serves this planet, and we must change. I hope that you all will bring about a change that will allow my children's grandchildren's to live in a world much better than if my generation had to define it. Because our definition is bringing about the ruin of the environment that we need to live in. Today, before I leave, I hope to pass on 3 truths to you, and they will stay with you for the rest of your life. I really don't like to talk. I like to have a conversation, because that is the way that we learn, through having conversations and discussions. This lecture series, this lecture protocol that has developed in universities were developed so that we could put more people through them, not that we can bring more education to people. Our universities in this society are rapidly changing to meet the needs of the business, the economies. In many universities, students can tell you what they're going to do, but they can't tell you what their major is. Because the question, especially if you're in art, the question is, what are you going to do with that degree? How are you going to get a job? So we have been trained from a young age, get a job. Get a job. Major in something that will get you a job. Major in something that will get you a life. If you get a life, you don't need a job. Because if you get a life, then you have faith in yourself that you can provide the resources with the community that you build to survive. If a corporation is willing to pay you to work for them, rest assured that they are making money off of you. They are not going to hire you out of the charity of their heart, because corporations have no heart. They are hiring you to make money. And if they can make money off of you, why can't you make money off of you? It takes a little longer, it's a little harder, but it can be done. Because we as a species exist through cooperation. We exist through helping each other. But we've been taught for the last 100 years, maybe longer than that. Yeah, since about the 1600s, that you don't exist as a corporation, as a co-op. You exist as an individual for your own survival. You as an individual cannot survive by yourself, despite all the lies that you may hear. You need someone else. There are no self-made people. Everybody depends on everybody else. Recently, I've noticed that there is this huge loss in the American population of tens of millions of people. They suddenly vanished. In 2020, there was this outcry and this recognition of essential workers. And now we do not hear a mumbling word about them. These are the people that we depend upon so we can go about and do our work. We are all interconnected. They did not suddenly appear in 2020 from anywhere to save our lives. They were always there. We failed to recognize them. There is a story that goes around in academia of a prof who at the end of the semester put one question on the exam and everybody flunked it. The question was, what's the janitor's name? Despite the fact that they saw that individual every time that they went to class. They did not take time to introduce themselves and have that individual introduce themselves to them. These are the essential workers that our civilization, our society is built upon. We must recognize them. We must become part of them. They must become part of us. These are the things that I think about when I'm in my shop printing. And I am not an artist, and I do not wear that label. I am a human being that prints because I believe that you should simplify things as much as possible. So rather than call myself an artist, I'm a human being. Because in order to be an artist, you have to be a human being. So I go back to the source. I make something, I print. Any human being can do that. I encourage all of you to take a printmaking course here. I encourage all of you to use up all of the resources that you have available to you here. Because one thing, if you do not work at a university or a college, you will not have this diversity any other place you go. You will be siloed in with engineers or social scientists or lawyers or doctors. You will not have this diversity. And it's this diversity that makes universities and colleges unique institutions in this society. Institutions so unique that they are under attack, that they want to be destroyed, are turned into football factories and basketball factories. Yes, I have something against both of those. Because I went to Grambling, and none of you know what Grambling is, but in its heyday, Grambling produced more professional football players than any other college in the United States. And it was a small black college. At the time I went, it had 3,000 students. And so when I left, the first thing that came out of the mouths of people when I said I went to Grambling, did you play football? No, black people can do more than play football. Why do you think you give me praise to ask me if I play football? Because that's what you want us to be, football players. And these are the things that shape the way that I work now and the things that I print. It's the injustices that I felt growing up, the injustices that my father and my mother had to experience in the South. That informs the work that I do. It is a need to remove these injustices whenever I can. I stand on the side of the oppressed. I use the press I have to speak for human rights, for the rights of this planet. I may be in the minority, But in my heart of hearts, I know that I am right, and I will not yield for any reason. I will not yield because I know that my oppressors will yield also. Because I know that my oppression is defined as much by me as by the person who oppresses me. That if I let you abuse me, you will abuse me. But when I say no, you will stop. This is something that we forget. That in order to be abused, you have to give that individual, that institution permission. Black people knew it. That's why we formed our own institutions, because institutions that existed would not allow us in. We stopped asking, and we formed our own. And they thrived and they prospered for 100 years. And it was only with the integration that a lot of those institutions lost their dominance in the black community. After integration, there are a few black printers. There are more black doctors, but not the same way that there were black doctors. After integration, we experienced a greater segregation because our communities, our black communities, no longer had the doctor, the lawyer, the teacher, the plumber, the mechanic, the cook, the maid going to the same church, their children's going to the same schools. Because those that we considered middle class moved out into neighborhoods that once would not let them live there. So the role models that those professionals, that their children provided, were gone, were stripped. We, as a civilization, as a society, I keep saying civilization because it's so common, but civilization is another whole topic that I won't get on. We, as a society, practice segregation by class. And we have done it since the beginning of this nation, and it continues. We use race as a substitute for class because I sincerely believe that the average white person, if you ask them, what is a poor person like? They're going to say black, ghetto, urban, because that's the image that's projected. How many of you have seen pictures of historically black colleges and the students on them? Yeah. Beautiful institutions, bright, intelligent people. But that is not the image that most people in this society see. And so black has become code for poor. Despite the fact that we have the Appalachia, despite the fact that we have rural America, which is in worse shape than some of urban America. Hospitals are closing every day in rural America. So medical care is hard to come by. They speak of food deserts in urban areas. Go out into rural areas and you'll see the same food deserts, despite the fact that it's farmland. It's 10,000 acres of corn that humans can't eat, or soybeans that humans use for feed for animals. It's not gardens growing fresh vegetables, orchards for fruit. There is real poverty. But for us, the face of poverty are black people, brown people, indigenous people. Why is that? When will that change? When will we see that the face of poverty are it's more than 40% of the population of this country. And what difference does it make? If we have 40% of our population starving, then we are not reaching the full potential of this nation's capabilities. And everyone knows that. It's a football adage that the weakest player brings down the greatest team. It applies to this society too. The weakest part of it brings down the whole, because you cannot separate us. You cannot say they're over there and they don't count, because we are part. We are not individuals, we are a group. We are not alone, we are together. We make it because of our cooperation. We make it because this is just the way our lives have been forever. Keep this in mind as you go through your studies. You don't become good by yourself, you become good with others. There's an adage that if you're the smartest person in the room, you should find another room. If you're the smartest person in the room, you should make that room smarter. Why should you take the resources from that room and put it in a room that already has enough? Share. Care. So if you find yourself in that room, share your knowledge. And are you really the smartest person? You may know the most about physics, but can you fix a leak in your plumbing? Can you fix your furnace when it goes out in the middle of winter? Everyone has a gift. Sometimes we refer to it as being smart. Everyone has a gift, and we must respect that gift. We must foster that gift. We must nourish that gift. We must learn from that gift. So whatever room you find yourself in, find the gifts in that room and nourish them so that room can develop and become a stronger room. Yeah. I said I don't consider myself an artist, and that's because when you label something, you really exclude, you don't include. So, oh, you're an artist. No, I'm a printmaker. So that excludes painters, that excludes sculptors, that excludes graphic designers, everything else, because I am now a printmaker. So you want to make things bigger. You want to say, I am an artist if you want to, because there are people who believe in it. I don't. And I forgot to tell you that there is no basis for what I'm saying other than the fact that I believe it. That is it. You can't say, well, who said that? No. This is just what I believe. And that belief was brought about through my printing as it helped me to understand how to print and how it relates to the greater world. I could be wrong, and I am probably wrong for everyone, because everyone has to develop their own understanding of life. There is no magic key. There is no one way, the right way. The right way is the way that you are most comfortable with. The right way is the way that you feel freest with. Find that way. It will be a struggle, but the struggle will not be as great as denying it. I can tell you, because I spent 20 years of my life denying the way, living the path of the American dream, as it was called. Corporate job, house in the suburbs, 2 children, 3 cars, family vacations, an immense amount of misery. Find your gift. Cultivate, grow your gift. Find environments that will allow your gift to grow. And I think that you will find more satisfaction for these limited days you have on this planet. Because the one thing that is not in abundance is the time that you will be here. We do not know when that end date is, but we do know that there is one. Use it as precious as it is. And as I was saying before I got sidetracked, labels have a tendency to exclude people. Therefore, I don't use them. People are people. I either like you or I don't like you based on who you are. Based on how you treat me than anything else. And that is one thing that I live by. Meet a person where they are. Seek to understand them. Accept where they are and move on if you don't want them in your life. Because there are people out there that you will have a great affinity with. People who understand and want to encourage you. Find those. They may not be the most popular. They may be a little shy. But take time. Learn from them, grow from them. Everything you do helps you become a better human being. But you must start every day saying, I want to be a better human being. I will actively work to be a better human being. I will cultivate my humanness, which is something that I believe we have forgotten, my generation have forgotten. I grew up and I was in my 30s, and one of the mantras was, I got mine, you get yours. That individual. I got mine, I don't care. You know, don't change the rules until I'm on the side of the winners. This mentality has got to end, and it will end. There was 3 things I told you I was going to say, and I wrote them down because sometimes I get lost. The first thing that I want you to remember is that Europe is not a continent. It is West Asia. Every continent is surrounded by water, at least 90% of the land mass. Europe isn't surrounded by water by 90% of the land mass. They got the Ural Mountains there that say, oh, that's Asia and this is Europe. It's one big land mass. So Europe is not a continent. The second thing I would like for you to always remember is that Africa is a continent, not a country. How many of you can name 10 nations in Africa? Oh, wow. You know, I'm with some outliers right now. Because most people, Africa is actually a continent bigger than a lot of the continents. Bigger than Europe. Europe is West Asia with a lot of little warring countries. And the third thing I would like for you to remember, have any of you heard of this thing called the tragedy of the commons? Okay. The tragedy of the commons is like, oh, we can't have, okay, to begin with, the commons is this thought that if we are on land, that is common land that everybody has access to and can use. There was no private property. Okay, private property is like maybe 700 years old, if it's that old. Okay, and then the tragedy of the commons is that you can't have a commons, because if you have a commons where everybody grazes their sheep, somebody comes along with 300 sheep and grazes it, bare, then your sheep can't, that's the tragedy. Someone can come along and just use it all up. And this has been floating around for like 30, maybe 50 years, why we can't have commons. But one thing that they disremember is that the commons are held by people. Any of you have a family? Okay, any of you have a family with brothers? Multiple brothers sitting down at the table, where the little one is little because the bigger ones eat the food? But somebody comes along and says, no, let Alan eat. Don't take that off his plate. You take it off his plate, guess what? We're going to remove you from the table. And this is what would happen in a commons. Someone may do it once, but they're like, no, we are all in this together. You cannot do that. Only someone who comes from outside with more force will do that. But within a community, within a village, the commons would survive. But they never bring that up. They just bring up, oh, this is why you can't have a commons. No, you can't have a commons because somebody breaks the trust of the community. And they were not ejected from the community. Because it's my understanding when we lived in tribes and in smaller groups, if you didn't conform, you would be sent away. We don't need that aggravation. You don't want to follow my rules? Go off. You can make your own rules and follow them all you want to. But the likelihood of you surviving was little, because you would have to know all the skills of the community to survive. So those are the three things that I'd like for you to take away from this. And now I'm just going to open it up for questions, because I don't have answers, but I'd like to hear what questions are.
Right. Well, let's begin the conversation then. First off, thank you very, very much, Amos. And just to mention one quick thing before we get to the conversation is the luncheon is full. So if you RSVP'd or talk to me, excellent. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. But now, who will open up the conversation? And it always, okay, good, here we go.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. That was the best convo I've ever come to. I guess this is a pretty general, basic question maybe, but I study philosophy here and I really enjoy writing and reading and would like to continue that throughout my life. But it's like, the question I always get is, what are you going to do with that? So there's a lot of pressure, obviously, to do something, like practical and something that will make you money from all sides. So what do you say, how do you kind of avoid succumbing to those pressures?
It helps a lot to be old. Now, really, experience experience is priceless. But, you know, well, what are you going to do with a philosophy degree? Well, you know, you could become president of the United States, but you may be overqualified. Or any politician for that matter. And why not become a politician? A politician is not a not-for-profit. Barack Obama was a community organizer in Chicago. If he made 6 figures, he made 9 figures as a community organizer. Barack Obama is now worth about $50 million. Politics makes money. You would probably have a hard time because you want to be more ethical. But if you study enough philosophy, you can figure out how to be unethical and enjoy it. But, you know, the thing is I hate to make this. Okay, I had a friend who wanted to learn Spanish. So he decided to audit a course at Wayne State University. It cost him $2,400 to audit the course. And I'm like, why don't 10 of us get together, pay a graduate student $2,400 to teach us Spanish 2 days a week for 9 weeks. And if we don't like it, we just say, hey, we through, we paid you, if 3 weeks in we don't want to do it anymore, you still paid and go about doing your business. You could, you could do something like that. People want to know what philosophy is. People want to understand it. Make it a hobby and then make money out of it. Because knowing philosophy is kind of important. Seriously, the doctors need to learn ethics. You go hire yourself out as a philosopher for a corporation. They need to have ethics. They need to know what philosophy is. A philosophy other than the one that they're following. There is, what is it? If you want to be a philosopher, there's got to be some way that you can figure. It takes time. And this is why I advocate that there should be a universal income for everybody until they're 65, so they can figure out what they want to do. Then at 65, you go to work. So if you die at 67, you didn't spend all your life waiting to retire so I could enjoy it. But in all seriousness, there should be some sort of support for 10 years so young people between the ages of 20 and 30 can figure out what you want to do, can experiment. Oh, I want to write a book. Well, I know I'm getting $30,000 a year, so I'm going to write that book. And if that first one doesn't work, I got time to write a second one. Because it is rare that the first event occurs the way that you want it to. If you're writing a grant, it is rare that you get it on the first time you apply. People want to see a track record. So you may have to apply 4 or 5 times before you get your first grant. And then once you get one, they start to come in a little regular. You begin to understand how they're written. But you need that time to learn. You need that time to actually learn how to do it. And what we do is we want you to learn how to do it at the same time you're doing it. There's a lot of pressure. Like, no, I don't have to worry about paying my rent because I can devote my time to this. Yes.
Oh. Hi.
Hi.
Wow, this is, sorry. Hi, I like the things you have to say. Thank you for coming to talk with us. I also like your overalls. I was wondering, I think they're really good overalls. I like overalls. I was wondering if you have like a favorite, well, not a favorite, I don't believe in favorites, but like what kind of things do you like to read, or what are you reading right now, or that sort of thing? I was curious about that.
I'm one of those people who don't read books, but I collect them.
Yeah, me too. What do you have in your collection so far?
Right now, I'm fluctuating between Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower and Robin Kilmer's.
Yes.
Her latest book on the service
gift economy. Yeah, the service.
Yes. The gift economy. Yes.
I have that also collecting, and I'm going to suppose.
See, there are people like you in the world. You're not alone.
Yay.
Yes.
Awesome.
And so I'm between that. I always mess up his name. I don't know if it's Lewis Hyde. I think it is Lewis Hyde. And he was a poet and a philosopher. He wrote a book called The Gift, where he talks about gift and gift economies. And he wrote this back in the 80s, maybe the 90s. You should read that.
Okay, yes.
Because that is one alternative that, there is this whole philosophy that we live up on a gift economy. And that you have a gift. There's a Japanese philosopher who said, your life is the gift to the world, is a gift from the world. And you are to gift that, you have a gift that you give to the world. And everyone has a gift. We need a society, we need a grouping of people that will allow every person's gift to flourish to the maximum. You cannot be happy in a room with an unhappy person. I don't care how many people are in the room. This is just, again, me thinking, okay? Alone in my shop by myself. But I believe that you give off an energy because you exist. And if that energy has sadness, sorrow, or unhappiness in it, that permeates the room. It takes the space where the happiness that you would have could be. It doesn't happen, it doesn't take over the entire room, but it tints the room. It changes the room. And I know you've all been someplace where suddenly everybody's happy and then someone shows up and like things get quiet, things change. Now the prophet's here now, we got to act different. What are you laughing about? Yeah.
Is it? Hi, thank you so much for your talk. If I remember correctly from the person who introduced you, your first degree was in math, and I'm a math major right now, and I'm wondering if you see like interactions between math and your art now, or do you think of that as almost like two separate paths?
There we go again, separating stuff. No, I don't see a difference. Let's see, how do I want to put this? There is a difference, but the difference makes it the same. Okay? If we were in Michigan, I would tell you take out your gummies and think about that. Because see, one, you're different from me. So you have a difference, and I have a difference. Therefore, we're the same because we both have differences. We don't have the same difference, but we have differences. And so you do not know the impact of your experience today on your life 30 years from now if you live it. So that course that you may be taking, like, God, I hate this, but it's required. 20 years from now, something may pop into your head and clarify an issue because of that course. And you may not even be aware. Because despite everything, we don't know how human beings function. We are just dumb blobs of meat running around thinking we know what we do, but we don't. Our bodies know more about us than our consciousness. So yeah, everything, like, oh, I don't want to take that course. You don't know where it's going to lead you. We have this idea of failure. You do not fail, you learn. And I have proof positive that you do not fail. When you were a child and you tried to walk, your parents encouraged you to try again when you fell down. But now if you do something wrong, they're like hard on you. Not like, oh yeah, well, you'll get better, you'll stop, because the reason you fell down was because you weren't walking correctly. But if you kept trying, you'll learn how to walk correctly. Well, if I keep wrecking cars, pretty soon I'll learn how to drive. But they don't have the same openness. Yes?
Hello, so I have two questions, actually.
Two?
So my first question is, you mentioned you're from rural Louisiana, I think Lafayette?
No, Grambling.
Oh, from Grambling. So I want to know how you think the black community can go by a lot of issues that are going on, like the issue with black farmers. Like 90% of black farmers from history don't even own the land anymore. And then also, I want to understand fully more of your idea of the black, the sport factory part that you're talking about in HBCUs and other colleges, right, and how that's such a big problem and how the black community should go about that.
Well, to begin with, farming is not popular throughout the United States. And the idea, we now have, what is it called, industrial farms. They're not individuals out there, with a one tractor taking care of the field. You should go out and see these farms. You walk up on a farm and you're looking at like $3 million worth of equipment that the guy's got to pay for. The black farming, what happened, one of the things that happened was there was this mass migration to urban areas for jobs in the, between the 20s and the 50s. And so they left, and they just left the farms because their parents were still alive. And they stayed up there, and they never went back, so the land got sold. And that's just part of the, it happened to white farmers too. Again, this is not just isolated for black folk, but as black people, we know about it. But, if you talk to some rural white people, they're like, yeah, we lost the farm. What was it? I think it was in the early 70s. Family farms just started to disappear. A family with 200 acres, in the Midwest, they could not sustain themselves, so they ended up selling the farm, or they went bankrupt, and they had auctions and sold off everything. It is just this, we, as a society, we believe that if we get big and we get one, that's what we want, one big monolith. And so our farms have become monolithic. They're not diverse. You go through Iowa, I think even if you go through, here is wheat and corn. You go through Iowa, and it's nothing but corn. Acres and acres of corn. No diversity. Nothing can live as a monoculture. We live through diversity. Nature is diverse. If we were supposed to have monocultures, nature would have done it. The planet dictated that we have diversity. But what? We are man, humans. We have dominion over this planet. We will whip it into shape. We will make it yield to what we want. Such arrogance. There is a return to small farmers. In the neighborhood I live, in Detroit, we have 4 urban farmers. Very small. They grow vegetables primarily, and they survive. You know, oh, a philosopher. I knew a guy who was a philosopher, and you know what he did for a living? He was a long-haul truck driver because it gave him time to give consideration to the ideas. But back to you, I'm sorry. But I'm old and that's the way my mind works, okay? So yeah, I think that there is a movement among blacks in urban areas to make urban farms. There are blacks that are going back. But, people, people like, oh, my ancestors were slaves. I ain't never gonna work on the land. Well, you know why my ancestors were enslaved? Because they were farmers in Africa. My ancestors were not kings and queens. My ancestors were dirt people. They worked in the dirt. They raised crops. That's why they brought us over here. We had the knowledge of agriculture that they needed. So it will come back. It will be a slow process because it's hard work. It's physically grueling. And no one wants to do that right now, at least few people. Most people would like to sit in the office, air conditioned, wear a suit or go casual Friday. They don't want to get up at the crack of day and get into the field and work until noon, take a break, and then go back and work again. To ache at the end of the day. We've grown a little soft because, as some of my friends say, well, my ancestors worked hard. That's why you're here today. And also, when you're on the farm, you touch the soil. You'd be amazed at how many people in this nation do not touch soil every day. They do not touch it. They get up, they go to the garage, they get in the car, they drive to work, they walk on the asphalt to the office, and then they repeat themselves. I would encourage you to make it your intent to touch the earth every day with your body. Not the asphalt that we put between us, not the concrete, not the brick, but the earth. And your second question, that has kind of died down because now one of the things that happened is that before historically segregated universities allowed black people into it, all the outstanding black athletes went to historically black universities. But now that places like the University of Alabama, where they had to call out the National Guard to get one black person in, now that they are hiring black football players, the best go there. And why not? Before they have this new thing where you get image rights. Before that, you would get a summer job and make, $10,000 for alumni, working for alumni doing anything, not doing anything. I mean, there were ways around it. So it was, profitable to go to the University of Alabama, University of Georgia for a black player. And so historically black colleges, that talent was drained from them. So that is not the same issue as it was when I was growing up. Yes.
So I really like what you said about thinking in a collective and kind of like considering ourselves as a part of a bigger whole. But I had a question about that, and it is, what do we do with individuality?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can you say that word for me?
Individuality.
So what I mean by that is, how do we value ourselves as a person, and how do we place ourselves as relevant? Because I feel like a lot of validity we find in what we do as a person by ourselves. So how do we apply that to a bigger whole, and what do we do, for example, with ideas of legacy?
Well, I think that for me, the way that I exert my individuality is by making myself a part of a larger group that I can share my talents with, and that group recognizes me. The individuality for me does not come from me, coming out of me, going out to the world, but it's from the world coming to me, saying that individual is the printer that I can go to. I know that if I need to use a mixer, I can go borrow Amos's mixer. And I think that individuality is tied to my belief that we are all dependent upon each other, that no one can do it alone. So I was raised in a world where, like, I got my own. I pulled myself up by the bootstraps. I did this. And then when you ask them, well, when did you find time to do that, to become a doctor? When did you find time to go to class? Because in order to get to class, there had to be a road. So when did you find time to build the road? When did you find time to mine the minerals to build the road? Oh. No, you said you did it all yourself. No, you were dependent upon hundreds of thousands of people to get where you are. And so that's just the way I look at it, that my individuality is defined by those people, the people that I'm closest to, that I assist them to achieve the dream that they have. I assist them to fully develop their gift.
This has been by far the fastest hour ever. Thank you very much. We're going to squeeze one more question.
Okay.
Thank you for all you've said today. I'm going to have to get a job as a trucker so I can think about it all. This sort of builds on Miranda's question. I've been thinking about, I love your art, and that's how I came to know you originally. And I think about mentors and peers and those who are coming up. And I'm curious about who your mentors have been and are, who your peers are now, both in art and in life, I guess. And who are you excited about coming up in the art world, and how does that community nourish you and your art?
Okay, everybody's my mentor and everybody's my peer. Because unlike the way that I was raised, I have kind of abandoned the duality that we have either on or off. I'm a mentor, you're the mentee. No, I believe that all relationships go back and forth. Some days I'm a teacher, some days I'm a student. I'm a student to the person who's never come into my shop and done something and printed before. Because I believe I can learn from everybody. I believe that everybody brings their own knowledge base. And guess what? I don't have your knowledge base. That's one of the things that makes you unique. And maybe that's it. It's not individuality that Individuality is different from uniqueness. And so that's what makes you unique, and I can learn from it. And I know that I can learn from everybody. So it goes back and forth. So everybody, you know, I mentor anybody who has the nerve to stand, you know, stick around me for a couple of hours. And I will listen and learn from anyone because they know something I don't know. Even a baby knows something I don't know. I have a great deal of ignorance, but a greater capacity to learn. Did that answer it? Thank you.
All right, and I just want to mention before we conclude, please look for the book, Amos Paul Kennedy Jr., Citizen Printer. It looks exciting. And now, thank you very, very much for being with us today. And of course, thank you all for being here. We'll see you next week.